What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Alright, so before I get into this video, man, I want to give a shout out to LB. Alright, and if you're not subscribed to LB, please subscribe to LB's YouTube channel. And if you are able to, please subscribe to his Patreon. He should have a link to his Patreon in some of his latest videos, because he just opened up his Patreon. I think it might have been a week or so ago. But he already has a lot of content on there. So please go to his Patreon, because this is what motivated me. He did a Patreon video about the misinformation / disinformation campaign when it comes to sports talk, in particular Fox Sports and ESPN. Now, you know, in general, I think the media in general, whether you're talking about entertainment, whether you're talking about politics, social, sports, it's just in general, there's a lot of misinformation out there and disinformation, stuff they're not even telling us. Okay, when it comes to sports talk, when it comes to talk, but the sports talk in general I'm focusing on. Alright, because in his Patreon video, he didn't let anything, he didn't hold anything back. He let everything go. And I can't quite go that route on YouTube, you know what I'm saying, the way I can on Patreon. But I want to say this. Interacting with sports fans today, the younger ones for the most part, and debating younger sports fans makes me long for the days of the so-called Kobe-tards, who have all pretty much grew up and, you know, for the most part, they're pretty knowledgeable sports fans. Some of them will still tell you they put Kobe over Mike. At the end of the day, it's just, you know, I disagree, but I'll say this. Most of the so-called Kobe-tards have grown up to become pretty knowledgeable sports fans and basketball fans. And that's cool, because they were younger then. All they knew was Kobe, but it wasn't quite as bad then. And even then, the media still talked about other players out there. And they didn't badmouth, you know, Wade to prop up Kobe. They didn't, you know what I'm saying? They didn't do that. This is something that's new. And, by the way, I brought this up before. The Kobe versus Mike argument is real, and it did happen. I think the peak of it was after Kobe won his fifth and ultimately final title, and he was just one away from Mike. That was the peak of it. Okay? Because I remember at that time, I was starting to write articles on Bruce Blitz's website at that time. You know, giving my opinion about that argument in sports in general. You know, I wrote an article about I think Joe Frazier, around a little bit after he had passed away. You know, boxing, you know, just in general, right? 'Cause I remember that time, it was a very intense debate, all right? But that's the thing. It happened. The media tries to make you guys think that Kobe's not even a top 10 or even top 15 player, when in reality, at that time, Kobe was a consensus best player in the NBA. But if you listen to guys like Nick Wright, all right, if you listen to guys like Shannon Sharp and others, you'll get the impression that Kobe is like on the level of a Latrell Sprewell. You know, like he's Latrell Sprewell, but just lucked up to win titles. Or he's Tracy McGrady, who was great, but he just happened to ride Shaq's coattails. No, that's bullshit. As a matter of fact, 10 years ago, LeBron wasn't even in this conversation. LeBron James was garnering sympathy from people like me because of how much he kept losing when he was with Cleveland. All right? He kept losing. Phenomenal individual player. But when it came to playing the upper echelon team, his teams faltered. Okay? That's the truth. But this misinformation campaign out there today has a lot of delusional fans who say a lot of delusional bullshit to the point where it's like it enrages you to even debate them because of the level of their stupidity and ignorance. It's like, I can't argue with this guy. He's not in logic land. You know what I'm saying? It's gotten that bad. You know, I can debate people with a difference of opinion. You know, it's not that. It's the fact that when I'm debating somebody, there has to be some level of there has to be some level of common sense and acceptance of factual information. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I were to say, cause look, I don't know much about baseball players of the past 10 years. I'm making a concerted effort this year to step up my game with baseball. I'm going to try to follow baseball this year. All right? So, I'm not going to sit there and tell someone, man, that dude Scherzer, whatever his name is, I think it's Max Scherzer or whatever the hell his name is, the pitcher. Man, he ain't as good as Randy Johnson. How would I know that if I've been following baseball for the last 10 years? Or am I just going off a biased opinion? You see, that's the type of shit that I'm talking about. Just because you haven't heard about a player or an athlete doesn't mean that they're not good. Just because an athlete did what they did before you were born, you narcissistic fuck, doesn't mean that they aren't good. Well, I ain't never heard of them. Oh, you a know-all now, motherfucker? You're God? When I was in high school, I never heard of Josh Gibson. I didn't know much about the Negro League baseball players. Now I know from research, they used to call Josh Gibson the Black Babe Ruth. As a matter of fact, some people that saw Josh Gibson said, no, you got it wrong. Babe Ruth was the white Josh Gibson, insinuating that he was better. That's another thing. That's another interesting video, man. What if Kennesaw Mountain Landis, that racist fuck, okay, who, along with the owners in the league at the time, from the 1920s into the 1940s after World War II, what if they didn't have that gentleman's agreement where colored players, as they called us, we'll call them, were barred? What if players like Satchel Paige, who finally came in the league when he was in his 40s but past his prime, what if guys like Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson and Oscar Charleston, you know what I'm saying? What if players like that were allowed into baseball in their primes or during their careers, period? What if Monty Irvin was allowed in earlier? You know what I'm saying? What if some of those great Negro League players were allowed to play earlier? We'd be looking at things differently. You know what I'm saying? I think we'd be calling perhaps Josh Gibson the all-time home run leader. You know, possibly, but he did die earlier, younger of a stroke. But I'm going away from the point. The point is, look, these guys that are out there in the media, okay, they have an agenda, okay? And if you look at my screen, that's the agenda, okay? You better believe that if a certain player was not in contention, there would not be this push to have this season go ahead. Okay, if you want to call it a season. They are trying their best, everybody, to help get this guy another ring. I mean, you got people like Nitwit out there saying this ring is going to count for 2 rings. Ridiculous shit. Shout out to Town Biz. I saw his video on Nitwit. So I guess if that's what you're using as far as upsets, the Pistons should have 2 rings, right, for that 2004 upset, which was a bigger upset than 2016. Nobody had the Pistons beating the Lakers. I didn't. I said the Lakers are going to sweep these boys. That's why you play the game. You never know, right? I guess Rick Barry deserves 2, maybe 3 rings instead of just 1 for when his Warriors, with only one other notable scorer at the time, a rookie Jamal Wilkes, upset the 60-win Washington Bullets. Now, the Bullets did go on to win a title 3 years later, but this was, these guys in their absolute primes. Elvin Hayes, Wes Unseld, Phil Chenier, what was that other guy, man? White boy. I think he averaged like 16 or 17 that year. Can't think of his name right now. But that team was at their peak, and they're supposed to sweep the Warriors, but it was the other way around. The Warriors swept them. Maybe Rick Barry deserves 2 or maybe 3 rings if you're going by this absurd logic, okay? And this is the type of irresponsible journalism that is out there now. People giving not factual information or opinion largely based upon fact. They're giving opinion based upon opinion and bias. This is to me, honestly, it's, if they had a call line, I so wish ESPN had a call line for these shows, man. It is beyond reprehensible what they're doing. It's beyond reprehensible. And look, as far as the GOAT argument is concerned, why is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar never mentioned? For all of his faults, Wilt Chamberlain used to be the consensus GOAT for a long period of time. Why is he still no longer in the conversation? Magic Johnson, I think, it's not absurd to bring him up. I mean, look at what he did in 12 years. Look at all of what Magic Johnson accomplished in basically 12 years of play. 5 NBA titles, 9 final appearances, 3 league MVPs. I think he led the league in assists 4 times or something like that. Maybe 5 times. Okay? Led the league in steals twice. I think he won 3 finals MVPs. I think he was the All-Star MVP at least twice. I mean, he accomplished so much. When he retired, he was the all-time leading assist leader. Okay, and this is a guy that only played 12 seasons. He still has the highest assist per game average in NBA history. So what would his numbers look like had he been able to play longer, at least until throughout the mid-90s? So the MVP argument should not just be limited to two basketball players, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? But all I'm saying is this, all right? I'm not dissing that particular player, but in any other circumstance, right? Could you name a player that's considered the GOAT with a losing finals record, and not only a losing finals record, but has been obliterated? Like, look, this is why I made that comparison with LeBron and Wilt. But even with Wilt, as lopsided as the Celtics teams were, most of those series were still close. A missed shot here, a turnover there, and you know, Wilt might have 2 or 3 more rings. LeBron got blown the fuck out by teams. And shout out to Jesse who made this point. With the exception of the 2012 Oklahoma City Thunder, who just played bad IQ basketball, and they were young. They were neophytes. Outside of that series, the 2011 Mavericks, the Spurs in 2014, they nearly showed it in 2013, but Duncan ran out of gas in the second half of Game 7. And Ginobili, it's like he forgot that he was on the Spurs team with his turnovers. But even with all of that, the Spurs still nearly won in 2013. If it wasn't for that and Ray Allen saving LeBron's butt in Game 6. We all know that. You take that away, right? And if you take away the 2016 where the Warriors lost Bogut, right? And the suspension the game fighter Draymond Green, who is a bum, but that series he wasn't a bum. You take all these things away, right? LeBron would have a horrific finals record. Horrific. Really, look. I mean, I know you shouldn't do these what ifs, but if Bogut didn't go down and Draymond didn't get suspended for Game 5, because he was hot that series, the best he's ever played basketball, Cleveland probably loses that series. They got blown away in 2017, blown away in 2018, right? 2015, they were shorthanded. All right? Lost in 2014, terribly. 2013, Ray Allen saved their ass. Plus, Duncan ran out of gas in Game 7. He's getting old. He was on pace to score 50 points, but he ran out of gas. Ginobili kept turning the fucking ball over everywhere in Game 7. And Dirk Nowitzki, with no other superstar, led his team to a victory in 6. That shows that smart IQ basketball beats the LeBron system. So that leads me to believe that if the Clippers are on their shit, right, and they play good team basketball, nobody, is trying to do too much, and they play within themselves, most likely they're going to beat the Lakers. And then the excuse is going to be, the Clippers were loaded. This team was just absolutely loaded. Nick Wright's already made that excuse, right? This team is just loaded. Well, I mean, look. What about when, the King was playing with Dwayne Wade in his prime, Chris Bosh in his prime? You know what I'm saying? He had, Mike Miller. He had all those guys, all those shooters. You know what I'm saying? All those defensive players on that team. And they won 66 games that year. I think they had a 27-game streak, right? But he never played on a loaded team, though. But everybody else played on loaded teams. And I'm going to end this video on this, too. Everybody keeps making, everybody keeps harping on the 2016 Warriors, right? and how they won 73 games, which they did. And, they made the Cavaliers sound like they were like this bum-ass franchise, right? This bum-ass team that only had two guys, right? LeBron, Love, and Kyrie Irving. But what we forget is that Kevin Love, when he was with Minnesota, was probably, I gotta think before I say this, but he was probably seen as a top one or two power forward in the league at that time, right? Kyrie Irving is a wizard with the ball. You know what I'm saying? Can break down any defense with his ball handling ability. LeBron was at his absolute prime still, right? But yet, that's not enough to beat this supposedly mysteriously overwhelmingly overpowering Warriors team, where as great as shooters as Clay and Steph are, they're not exactly the best at creating their own shots, right? And we've seen that defenses can, if not shut down Clay and Steph, it can contain them. This is before they got Durant. Draymond was inconsistent offensively. They had a hell of a bench. But if you played smart basketball and not try to play like and step, if you try not to play like the Warriors and play your game and play good defense, you could beat them. I've seen teams during that season that were close to beating them, but they started trying to play like the Warriors and the Warriors just beat them. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to like the Warriors aren't an all-time great team. I'm not saying that. But it gets overstated a lot of times about how much of a upset that series is. I'll tell you another thing, too. And this is going to be it. When do you start getting credit? You know what I'm saying? For how many wins you have if you lose. You know what I'm saying? Look. 1973 Boston Celtics, right? They used to have the record until the 2016 Warriors for most wins for a team not to win a title. Okay, they won 68 games that year, and they lost in the Eastern Conference Finals to the New York Knicks, who went on to win the title, right? Now that team had John Havlicek, right? I'm looking at the numbers. They had John Havlicek. Now Honda was 32, so he was still close to his prime. He averaged 24 points, 7 rebounds, 6.5 assists. Dave Cowens, who just yesterday Colin Cowherd called a midget, right? He won league MVP that year, averaging 20.5 points, 16.2 rebounds, 4.1 assists. This is just before they started counting steals and blocks. Joshua White, who if he's not a Hall of Famer, should be a Hall of Famer, averaged 19.7 points, 5 rebounds, 6.1 assists. Paul Silas, the coach, was another terror on the boards, averaging 13.3 points, 13 rebounds, 3.1 assists. Don Chaney, 13.1 points, 5.7 rebounds, 2.8 assists. And Don Nelson, the future coach, 10.8 points, 4.4 rebounds, 1.4 assists. They also had on their bench Paul Westphal, who would go on to be one of the best scorers in the league with the Phoenix Suns. He was on their bench, a young Paul Westphal. They still had Tom Sanders coming off the bench. Tom Satch Sanders. This is a loaded fucking team. Loaded. The Knicks beat them, right? They won 68 games. They're in their 70 games. Maybe the Knicks right, who Colin Cowherd was disparaging yesterday, maybe they deserve 2 rings for that. And he said that the Knicks couldn't shoot. He said the Knicks, mind you, had nobody that could shoot. That's funny, because I damn sure remember Walt Clyde Frazier having a mid-range game. I damn sure know that Earl the Pearl Monroe had a mid-range game. He was a great scorer. His best scoring years was with the Baltimore Bullets before he got traded to the Knicks, who want to become the Washington Bullets. See how they make shit up? There was no 3-point line back then, Colin Cowherd. So if you're going by 3-pointers, there was no need for guys to shoot 25 feet because it was still 2 points. So you're going to shoot mid-range jumpers. It's closer. But they damn sure had a jumper. What are they talking about? This is the type of misinformation that I'm telling you guys. Don't listen to these dudes, man. Don't listen to these people. They have agendas. Don't listen to them.